Item number 1 is for approval of the agenda. I'm seeking a motion.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Have a motion?
I'll second.
Have a motion and second. Call for the vote. 3 in favor. Those opposed? 2 opposed. That item is passed. Item 2 is the discussion and information for the district's administration policy, rules and procedures manual, chapter 3, section 3-8. If the general manager is terminated for non-malfeasance, upon his removal, he shall be paid his salary at the same rate for 3 months following the date of their approval. There is no action required on that. I believe we've done that, and the check is ready to go out. Is that correct, Mary?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I wasn't here when the agenda was crafted for this meeting, but my understanding is that the board could discuss this, could ask questions of staff to discuss how this policy works. But yes, previously a policy was implemented that it would be treated as Ted read. I've got the policy here if any board member wants to hear it. No, as Ted mentioned, no action, based on the way the agenda was written, no action is to be taken. And I do believe that a check has been prepared, but I don't know that it has been delivered. Is that correct?
I have
Oh.
If I may, I just have one question about that. I mean, I'm all for that, but the day that Ken came in to pack his things and I was here, Mary was writing checks. I signed checks. I asked at that time, isn't there a severance package? Isn't there something else? And at that time, I was told that there was nothing there. So it was asked, and I was told there wasn't. And now we do show that there actually was a policy. So.
Okay, item 3 is for discussion and possible action. Consideration of appointment of an interim general manager to serve until the general manager's position is filled. Possible action may include, but are not limited to, appointment of the interim general manager, establishing compensation per appointment internal general manager, and granting the appointment interim general manager with authority to temporarily manage the day-to-day operation of the Virgin Valley Water District. Any comments here? Yes.
At this time, I don't think we should have an interim general manager. I think our manager should be brought back and due process done properly for him and for this district.
That's a motion. I'll be happy to make a second on that.
I would make that a motion.
I didn't ask for a motion.
I will make a motion that we bring back our general manager and not appoint an interim manager.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Does that even vote as point of order? Does that meet with the agenda item?
The way I read the agenda item, it doesn't appear to contemplate bringing back the former general manager. That certainly could be put on an agenda, and action certainly could be taken to do that. I think part of Sandra's motion is accurate, that she could indicate that the district does not want to appoint an interim general manager. That would fall within the scope of the agenda item, but beyond that, I think the board would need to handle that in a separate, just because the way the item is written, I don't think it would permit that kind of an action. I think it might maybe outside the scope of that.
I would be willing to change my motion that I do not believe we need an interim general manager. I think we need to look at this in more depth.
Who's going to make the decisions between now and the time that you put this back on the agenda?
We have 6 supervisors that handle the day-to-day things. We have our assistant manager, we have our accountant, we have our field representatives. I think that they should be able to do the day-to-days until we can address this.
Does the assistant general manager have all the responsibilities given?
My understanding is yes, that the assistant general manager acts in the place of the general manager if the general manager isn't present. I think that's how it's structured, that they would effectively have all of that same responsibility. Yeah, in fact, let me read this. An assistant general manager shall serve in the absence or incapacity of the general manager and shall assume those powers and duties granted the general manager. So it doesn't expressly contemplate this exact situation. I think this speaks to an issue where the general manager is a specific person that's working for the district at the time, and the assistant general manager falls into that, but I think the board could interpret it that way, that the assistant general manager would fill that role.
Is that Aaron's title as assistant manager? I know he's a hydrologist.
Yeah, my understanding is that Aaron was formally appointed the assistant general manager about a year ago.
Yeah, April 2011.
Mr. President,
Okay.
I've had an opportunity to talk to a couple of our employees, and one being Aaron and one being Wes Smith. And Aaron indicated to me that to try to maintain being the hydrologist and also to do everything else that would be involved, that it would be a workload that he doesn't think it would be something he would be able to stay on top of. Is that correct, Aaron? Is that discussion we had?
Solely, I've
I'm
discussed.
just talking about on a temporary basis. Is that a discussion we had?
We had a discussion that we did, talked about all the different items that are needed here at the district, and talking with staff and being able to fulfill all those with the assistance of the office manager, the accountant. Just as discussed, the work's going to have to get done, and I'm willing to do whatever the district requires
Yeah, I know
to
you
do, so.
I also had a discussion with Wes Smith, and Wes said that he could have some more available time and to help fill in where you two work together, and he would be.
Correct.
And he could work, he said, up to 7 hours a day if he was needed to do that much. If he's gonna do that, obviously, then we need to talk about compensation for him. But anyway, that's just a thought.
If I might, Carl, I think in our conversation, I first expressed a great desire to do whatever I need to do to help the district move forward. 7 hours might be stretching me. 5 to 6, I could come in early, and I could do 5 to 6 hours a day, probably would be comfortable. And again, I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to help things function properly. I do not see myself, because of lack of experience, education, and training in the area of water, I don't see myself being able to fill a role that like Aaron does, but I'm willing to help out on the administrative side.
Okay. So that's available to us.
Is there any other board comments?
Well, I think if Sanders gonna make the motion that we don't appoint an interim general manager, and we have it in place with the assistant general manager, I think, I don't have a problem with that, other than compensation wise. I mean, if Aaron's willing to do the job for what Aaron's getting paid now, I guess, that's up to Aaron. And it's up to the board here, if we're not gonna compensate him for doing more, then that's a decision we're gonna have to make. But if he's gonna take on all the responsibility, which from what Bo read there, he has all the responsibility now, because we don't have a general manager.
Kenyon, I don't disagree with what you just said. I think the only thing there is that I don't think, based on my discussions with Aaron, that he feels like he can do everything and general manager and the whole thing without some help. So as far as, if there has to be some compensation for him, so be it. But I think we need to put him in a position where he can actually do the job and not try to cram a bunch of stuff down his throat.
And I understand.
When I talked to Aaron, he indicated to me that, yeah, he thought the workload was too much. But he also thought that with the help of Mary and Wes, that he would be able to delegate some of those responsibilities out to the point where he could handle it. Is that correct, Aaron?
Correct, if I may, that's exactly what I was getting at with all that's going to be required currently, that setting up for failure without being able to have delegation of, I do have a lot of understanding with interacting with the staff, be it treatment, distribution, the function of those, and the inner workings of staff, supervisors. Have quite a bit also with administration. At the same time, with Mary Johnson, she allows the steering of information. When I say that, I mean, look up of the information, being able to put the board agendas together, looking up NRS statutes. She's very quick on her feet to do that. That's something that I was conveying is with the assistance of Mary and then also with Wes Smith, that things could be accomplished. And I guess that's where I was stating my thoughts is, single-handedly, no, but we went through this once when Mike Winters was left, and that's what I was stating. I mean, Mary, she's always been a huge asset to the district, and she stepped up then. And Pete Peterson at that time stepped up. I'm willing to step up. That's in 2011 when there's issues that needed to be taken care of. That's why I volunteered for the assistant general manager, knowing that's something the district needed. It needed that. I'm here for the district. I love my job. That's, at the time, I didn't ask for any compensation. That's a role that I just felt it was going to be short-term and could do in that aspect on a short-term basis. At this time, I mean, it's going to be longer-term. I guess I would be open to looking. I know with my last employer review, there was a recommendation in there too. I'm not even a supervisor position right now. I'm hydrologist too. There was a recommendation to just go up one step, state some of the assets that I bring to the water district.
What was that one step to? What's the title?
It's hydrologist 2, step 4.
No, to move up.
Well, correct. Originally, it was only the recommendation was, and then I stated some of the assets that I bring to the district and looked at. And what I did bring was worth. I am doing supervisor role. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, taking that into account, then the recommendation was to go to supervisor. So with that, I mean, that was for the July 1st when that recommendation would go into play. But I would not be opposed to if that's what the board deems to do that now. So that's.
We offered Pete a 10% over his present salary when we asked him to be the interim general manager. Would you be comfortable with that as a 10% increase over his salary?
Would that be as much as the advancement to the hydrologist? What's the?
Probably not.
I mean, I hate to talk about your salary here in front of everybody.
Yeah.
I know it's not. What do you? Are you on an
My
hourly?
current salary?
Uh-huh.
No.
Are you on an hourly?
Okay. All
I
right.
am hourly, yes.
I think it's a shame that we have a hydrologist on an hourly pay rate.
Do we want to discuss this now at this time?
I think, yeah, I
Well,
think it's
okay.
appropriate.
I would say that he should be moved to an income higher than our highest paid division manager. Does that make sense to everybody?
Doesn't make sense.
Hmm? So we would need to move him to about $73,000 a year.
And if we just moved him to the next step that he was recommended to move to,
How much would that be,
Instead?
Mary?
I believe $30.89 an hour
As the next step up?
at supervisor, hydrologist supervisor.
So, something you guys may wanna keep in mind is, Aaron talked about his last review, and I think a recommendation that he be moved to a supervisor position. I think there's already, and Mary can probably speak to this better than anybody, but there's probably already in place a specific pay that's associated with that.
She just said that.
I asked, okay, and I was asking Aaron at the time, Pete's 10% increase that Ted referenced was for that interim period only when he when he served that interim capacity, so you could do a combination of the two.
Yeah, I think that I have a motion. If that's okay. I make a motion that we ask Aaron and Mary and Wes, to bear the load of the general manager position for an interim period. And also in that motion, I'll include moving Aaron up to a supervisor pay rate. And during the interim time that they bear this burden, each of them shall realize a 10% increase in their wages until such time as the general manager is appointed.
Okay. You got that, Mary?
I believe we already have a motion.
Yeah, I was gonna raise two things. One is, I don't know that Sandra's motion was fully considered by the board, and then actually a vote was called for that motion. Then with respect to Rich's motion, I know I mentioned a combination of the two. I think this agenda item would allow for the 10% increase. As far as moving up to the supervisor position, that's not part of this agenda item. So I think if the board wants to do that, it's absolutely okay. We probably just need to do it in a specific agenda item. Is that normally done, Mary Ann? I don't remember an agenda item coming like.
Typically
Because
this happens in the
because
budget
it's personnel, it usually goes, it's.
Done by the general manager, right?
Right.
Okay.
So where are we at?
I think we need to
Sandra's
have a
got a
vote.
motion,
Okay.
which,
So what-
could you restate your motion? So I can-
So
Just
what
about
is your
to hire
motion
an
again?
interim general manager. Not to appoint an interim
My
general
motion
manager.
was to not appoint an interim manager, but that we use the staff as the supervisors that we have.
Okay. You wanna just add the salary part to your motion, and I'll retract my motion.
I would be willing to see Aaron moved up to the supervisory position that was suggested. I think if he's moved to that there shouldn't be an additional 10% to that. He's already making a step up in wages and in position. I don't think both are required.
From what Bo said just before that, though, in this motion, or in this agenda item, it's not, there's nothing there that says that we can move Aaron up, correct?
Well, yeah, I mean,
I mean,
we don't have a general manager to handle that internally without board action.
now, my understanding is that that was supposed to take place in July 1 at,
It's gonna be part of the budget process that would go before the board for approval in the budget process. And if approving the budget, then it would be started July 1st.
Okay, so that was a decision that was made already.
Well, not
it was
necessarily.
going into the budget, but until the board approves the budget, it wasn't gonna take
Okay,
place.
so it
Right.
happened in connection with that.
Yeah, the first time that would have been brought to the board was in the first budget work session where we would have presented each of the individual line items, and that would have been then discussed at that point in time.
Okay.
And that's in about a week, isn't it?
No, it's,
March, early
Um,
March.
yeah, sometime mid-March, I think.
But even then, it's not gonna go into effect until July 1, and it's not gonna, and that's just a workshop, that's not we don't approve the budget
That-
until mid-May.
That's correct. The final budget approval doesn't happen until the end of May.
So, if we were to approve Aaron as the interim manager, could we then compensate him?
Yes, yeah, the agenda item
The
specifically
agenda item
says that.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say that the compensation's gonna be exactly what it's going to be when assuming the budget's approved and so forth, you could say it's gonna be the same, and then when that takes place in May and there's action taken, his salary remains the same, correct, Wes?
Well, the way I kinda understand what we've discussed to this point, I mean, it's just a matter of words as far as interim general manager, I mean, he's already the assistant general manager right now. So, and he has all the authority to do whatever the general manager does in the absence of the general manager. So, in reality, I don't see that there's a need other than to term him the interim general manager. Not a whole lot of reason to make that motion. The only thing that I think that needs to be done is if we're going to compensate him for that. If we're not gonna compensate him for that, then this motion, or this item dies for lack of a motion, and we continue on as already have been over the last week.
Okay.
Okay, so we still have.
We still have
Sandra's
motion.
motion
We
to,
still got Sandra's
And
motion on
is there, and you seconded it, correct, Carl? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we don't appoint an interim general manager, so.
That's your motion, that we do not appoint a general manager, and that's been seconded, so we'll call for the vote. All those in favor? 2 in favor, all those opposed?
Sandy, where are you at?
I personally don't see that the motion is, I mean, I'm not opposed to not doing it, but I don't think that it needs to be even on motion because it's already taken effect. There's no need to do it. That's just my opinion.
okay, I think, and I don't disagree, I mean, it's kind of semantics, whether he's the assistant general manager, which he currently is, or whether he's the interim general manager. I think the role is the same based on the way the policy manual is written. I think the question remains with respect to any change in salary. That's what the agenda item calls for, is determining that salary. At least I am unclear on exactly where you guys are at.
And that's what my whole previous running my mouth about was, in reality, the only thing that this item is doing is, are we gonna compensate him for it or are we not?
So if we call him an interim, we can compensate him. If we don't, we can't.
I don't see that at all. I think it's just that we have an option here to either compensate Aaron unless we're gonna appoint somebody else other than the assistant general manager as the interim general manager.
Yeah, I mean, it probably would be, number one, we just need to get a decision on Sandra's motion, just what we're gonna do. If it passes, great. If it doesn't, then another motion can be made. So that needs to be.
Well, I need you to clarify for me, I guess. If we pass the motion, I don't have a problem with the motion either, but if we pass it, can we compensate Aaron?
I think that you guys would be better off, and this is kind of lame because just the way it's written, we're just getting bogged down in this. My suggestion would be, go ahead, if the board wants Aaron to serve as the interim general manager, it probably would make sense to go ahead and do that, because that's, the agenda item calls for compensating an interim general manager. The board doesn't want to appoint him as the interim general manager. You may have an issue with his changing his compensation because he's still an assistant manager. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so we need to complete Sandra's motion.
Well, I thought we just did.
Everybody has voted on that, except I didn't see a vote from Kenyon.
Either way I vote, it's, unless I vote for their motion. If I don't vote, it's a tie vote and it dies for, correct?
Yeah, so if you're gonna abstain,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, then the motion
Okay,
is
the
not
motion
carried.
died, so I'll ask for another motion on item 3.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Aaron interim general manager and that we raise his salary to a supervisor salary at this time.
What about Marion?
Are we clear on exactly what that is?
Is it the supervisor salary that's currently in effect?
Hydrologist.
Or the supervisor salary that is going before the board, in the budget?
What's the difference in that? Can you tell us just right off the top?
Probably cents, I don't know that it's.
Just pen, yeah.
That's just the first level or last level to,
The first level.
okay.
Yeah.
It would be cleaner to do it because we haven't got the approved one. It would be cleaner to do it as it
First level.
is right now. First level existing pay grade and pay schedule.
Okay, are you happy with that, Aaron?
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Everybody voted as unanimous, so everybody voted for that.